In the late 1980s, in the urban areas of Saitama and Tokyo, Japan, a horrific serial killer emerged, specifically targeting young girls. The brutality of his crimes provoked intense outrage. He committed numerous atrocious murders and successfully evaded police capture each time. To avoid detection, he kidnapped the girls and took them to desolate places before killing them. This case was listed as one of the most infamous in Japanese criminal history and was designated by the Japanese police as nationwide significant case number 117. The story unfolded in Saitama Prefecture, situated in the heart of the Kanto region and one of the 8 landlocked prefectures of Japan. Saitama is an integral part of the Greater Tokyo area, with most of its cities serving as commuter towns for Tokyo. In the southwestern part of Saitama Prefecture is the city of Iruma, with a population of about 150,000, known for its Saitama tea products. In 1988, a terrifying event occurred in Iruma, which has haunted those aware of the case to this day. On the evening of August 22, 1988, the Iruma police station in Saitama received a distress call from a couple reporting their 4-year-old daughter missing. She had gone to a friend's house around 3 p.m. and had not yet returned. Despite searching everywhere, she was nowhere to be found, prompting an urgent request for police assistance. The missing girl, named Mari Kono, was the second child in a well-to-do family. Her father was a Tokyo-based company executive, and her mother was a homemaker. The family lived in upscale residential area in Kasuga Town, Iruma. Normally, Mari and other neighborhood children played outside unsupervised without any issues. That afternoon, after returning from swimming, Mari asked her mother if she could visit a friend, which her mother permitted. By evening, dinner was ready, and her father had just returned from a day's work, but Mari was still absent. Feeling uneasy, her parents called her friend's house, only to learn that the friend hadn't seen Mari since after swimming. Distraught, they enlisted relatives and friends to help search the local streets and places Mari might go, but as darkness fell, only a few pedestrians remained outside. After hours of fruitless searching, they decided to report her missing to the police. Upon receiving the report, Iruma City Police immediately initiated an investigation, starting at Mary's home and questioning neighbors and passers-by. The area, including alleys and parks, was thoroughly searched. Mary's family also distributed flyers with her photo and information in densely populated areas, hoping for her swift return. Given the family's affluent status and the father's high-profile job, the police suspected a kidnapping for ransom. Typically, kidnappers would contact the family to demand a ransom, so police monitored the family's phone 24/7, waiting for a crucial call. However, nearly a month passed without any contact, ruling out the initial kidnapping theory. Opposite Mary's house was a pedestrian overpass she would use to access the park, convenience store, kindergarten, and friends' houses. Police speculated that on the day of her disappearance, instead of crossing the overpass, Mari might have tried to cross the road below and was accidentally hit by a car. The driver, panicked, could have taken her away. This theory led to an inspection of the road under the overpass, but no signs of sudden braking or a collision were found, leading to the rejection of this hypothesis. If not an accident, someone with a grudge against Mary's family due to their social standing or her father's business success might have abducted her for revenge. Based on this clue, police interrogated hundreds of individuals connected to Mary's family but found no useful leads. The case, initially deemed a missing persons incident, gradually shifted to suspected abduction and eventually murder. Given Mary's young age, the media coverage quickly garnered widespread public interest and concern. To solve the case, police printed over 50,000 flyers with Mary's image and distributed them nationwide, also warning parents to keep a close watch on their children to prevent similar incidents. Iruma City Police increased patrols, using loudspeakers on police cars to remind children to head home early and not wander alone. On October 3, 1988, a month and a half after Mary's disappearance, a first-grade student from Hano City in southwestern Saitama also vanished under mysterious circumstances. The girl, Masami Yoshizawa, aged 7, attended Hano Ichimura Elementary School, near Iruma. The two cities are about a 20-minute drive apart, and the circumstances of Masami's disappearance closely mirrored Mary's. Masami was known as a well-behaved, understanding child who never strayed after school without returning on time. That evening, however, she did not return for dinner, prompting her worried mother to search the school and eventually report her missing at the local police station. Masami comes from a normal family. Her father was a taxi driver, and her mother worked part-time to support the family. With the new disappearance, police believed Masami had been abducted, leading to a search operation involving dozens of people and a thorough investigation of over 2,300 individuals, but again, no suspicious clues emerged. As the investigation stalled, police revisited Mary's unsolved case, noting striking similarities between the two incidents. Suspecting a single perpetrator behind both crimes, the Hano City Police intensified their efforts. Although without concrete evidence, the investigation made little progress. 2 months after Masami vanished, on December 12, 1988, another young girl disappeared in Kawagoe City, Saitama. At 5 p.m. that day, a 4-year-old girl named Erika Namba returned home from kindergarten and played alone in her front yard. As darkness fell, her mother, not seeing her return inside, began a frantic search but found no trace of her. Eventually, she reported the disappearance to the Kawagoe City Police. Unlike previous cases, 3 days later, on December 15, Erika's body was discovered by a passerby in a forest near a parking area in Nagori, Hano City, about 40 kilometers west of her home. This time, police had a crucial lead. 2 witnesses collecting wood in the forest saw a suspicious man driving down the mountain. They described a black Toyota with a 3-digit license plate, although they couldn't recall the exact numbers. What made the car memorable was his struggle with the unfinished drainage ditches on the mountain road, getting stuck until the witnesses helped push it free. The driver, whose face was obscured, appeared odd, estimated to be around 30 years old and about 170 centimeters tall. After helping, the witnesses watched as the driver sped away without expressing any gratitude. With this lead, nearly all Toyota owners in the area and neighboring cities came under scrutiny. Police investigated recent maintenance records, accident reports, and even scrapped Toyotas but found nothing. Expanding the investigation, over 1,000 households were questioned, and nearly 20,000 cars were inspected. During this time, Erika's family received an anonymous letter containing a single line of text, a cryptic message that translated to, "Can't revive. So pitiful." On February 6, 1989, 6 months after the first incident involving young Mari, her father discovered a box outside their house. The box contained soil, charred bone fragments, some milk teeth, and several photographs of children's clothing, including pink shorts and sandals exactly like those Mari wore when she disappeared. Underneath, her father found several pieces of paper with cryptic words hinting at the fate of the victim. The words were cut out from magazines, then copied, enlarged, and pasted together, a method similar to the anonymous letter Erika's family received. Authorities sent the bones and teeth for forensic analysis, confirming they belonged to Mari, concluding she had been murdered. 4 days later, on February 10, Tokyo's Asahi Shimbun newspaper received a letter signed by Amada Yuko. Mary's father also received a similar letter. The letter, containing a photo of Mary's face, was from the self-confessed killer, detailing how he had lured, kidnapped, and murdered the young girl. Within 6 months, Saitama Prefecture witnessed 3 similar cases, creating a new wave of national attention. Almost every Japanese citizen was aware of these incidents, causing widespread anxiety and fear. Adults hesitated to let children outside alone. The letters were seen as taunts towards the police, doubling the pressure on them to solve the cases. Due to the scant evidence, the investigations faced significant challenges. Although the killer later identified himself as Amada Yuko in the letters, it was merely a pseudonym. On June 6, 1989, 6 months after the third case, a fourth incident occurred. A 5-year-old girl named Ayako Nomoto was reported missing in Koto Ward, Tokyo, kidnapped while playing in Higashi Kumo Park near her home. This case is similar to the previous 3 cases, occurring near Saitama Province. Given the consecutive incidents in Saitama the previous year, Tokyo and Saitama police conducted a joint investigation, treating the cases as a series of connected crimes. The case was classified as nationwide significant case number 117, indicating its priority status. This meant that national police resources were mobilized for the investigation. More than a month after the fourth victim, Asako, was reported missing. On July 23, 1989, a man in Hachioji City, Tokyo, reported a disturbing incident related to his daughter. At 4:30 p.m. that day, his 9-year-old and 6-year-old daughters were playing in a local park when a man with a camera approached and asked to take a photo of the two sisters. The older sister was a bit hesitant, but the younger sister readily agreed and went with the man. After the two left, the more the older sister thought about it, the more scared she became, so she quickly ran to find her father to tell him. After that, father and son went looking for their sister around the park. In the nearby woods, I found my daughter naked. In front of him there was a man holding a camera to take pictures of her. Witnessing such an incident, I was filled with rage and charged at him, furiously attacking and wrestling with him. However, he managed to struggle free and quickly fled the scene. In his rush to escape, he left his car behind. After receiving the report, the police immediately arrived at the scene. They had been lying in wait. When they saw a suspicious man, looking panicked and trying to drive away, they quickly apprehended him and confirmed that he was indeed the man who had harassed the young girl in the forest. Investigation revealed that his name is Miyazaki Tsutomu, 27 years old, with a refined face that one would not easily associate with a sick pervert. After the incident, the police suspected that Miyazaki might be linked to several previous attacks on young girls. The car Miyazaki left was a dark blue Nissan. Upon examining the car, the police made a shocking discovery: numerous ropes and gloves, clearly not ordinary items. After conducting a luminol test, a significant amount of fluorescent reaction suggested the presence of blood in the car. Subsequently, the police officially arrested Miyazaki. When questioned about his crimes, Miyazaki often talked about nonsensical things and blamed Ratman, an alternate persona he claimed forced him to commit these sick acts. He also spent time during the investigation drawing Ratman, a cartoon rat character. 2 weeks later, on August 19, 1989, Miyazaki confessed to murdering his fourth victim, Ayako Nomoto. When asked about his motive, Miyazaki nonchalantly replied that the girl had mocked his deformed hand, so he killed her. Going back to the day of Ayako's murder, on June 6, 1989, around 6 p.m. at Higashi-Kumo Park, Tokyo, Miyazaki lured 5-year-old Ayako into his car with the pretense of taking pictures. As they were driving near the park, Ayako suddenly mocked his hand, which enraged Miyazaki. He stopped the car in a secluded area and strangled Ayako to death inside the vehicle. Afterwards, he covered her body with a bedsheet, placed it in the trunk, and drove it back to his apartment. Over the next 2 days, he sexually abused Ayako's corpse, taking photos from various angles and even filming the acts. When her body began to decompose, Miyazaki dismembered it, leaving parts at a cemetery and her head on a nearby hill, keeping only her hands, which he used to drink her blood and gradually consume by cooking. 2 weeks later, fearing discovery, Miyazaki returned to the cemetery in the hills to retrieve Ayako's remains, which he then hid in a closet at his home. The police were horrified as Miyazaki recounted the whole incident. The murderer, born in August 1962 in Ikuruno, Tokyo, was 27 years old. Because his parents were often too busy to take care of him, they had hired a mentally disabled man to live in and look after him. Miyazaki's grandfather, a government official, concerned about his grandson's lack of care, moved in to help raise him during his childhood. Miyazaki was born prematurely and had a rare congenital defect that fused his wrist joints together, preventing him from bending his wrists upwards. Because of his deformed hands, he was ridiculed in kindergarten and unable to play with others, leading to isolation and bullying throughout his school years. This treatment deeply affected Miyazaki, contributing to his psychological pain and low self-esteem, which isolated him throughout his childhood. Despite his family's wealth and influence in Ikuruno and his parents owning a small newspaper, Miyazaki never expressed any desire to take over the family business. In 1978, at the age of 16, Due to his excellent academic record, Miyazaki attended Maidai Nakano High School in Nakano, Tokyo, quickly becoming a star student. However, by the end of high school, his grades had significantly dropped. He ranked 40th out of 56 students in his class and lost the chance to enter Meiji University. After graduating from high school in April 1981, instead of studying English and becoming a teacher as he initially planned, Miyazaki decided to attend a local college to become a photo technician. In college, Miyazaki's distorted mental state worsened. He took photos of female tennis players and became immersed in dark and pornographic manga. But soon, he grew bored because those publications blurred the most critical parts. After graduating from college in April 1983, thanks to his uncle's recommendation, Miyazaki worked as a printer operator at a printing company. However, his poor work ethic led him to resign shortly thereafter. Being the eldest son, his parents expected him to take over the family business, but he showed no interest in doing so. Miyazaki spent months locked in his room, rarely going outside. Eventually, he agreed to help his parents but only performed simple tasks like moving documents. During his time back living with his family, Miyazaki was rejected by his two younger sisters, who showed disdain towards him. Only his grandfather remained a source of encouragement after every failure in his life. During this period, Miyazaki also dated a girl, but due to his hand deformity, she felt awkward around him, and the relationship ended quickly. Heartbroken, Miyazaki felt lost and confused. At that time, he became obsessed with anime characters and began to create and self-publish a doujinshi manga, though this endeavor also failed. 3 months before committing his first crime, on May 16, 1988, his grandfather passed away. At the funeral, Miyazaki was appalled by the fierce disputes among relatives over the inheritance, which greatly angered him. His grandfather was very important to Miyazaki, being the only one in the family who truly acknowledged and loved him. The loss of his grandfather dealt a severe blow to his already fragile mental state, making him even more withdrawn from society. Simultaneously, his worldview began to distort further, becoming one of the catalysts for his later crimes. A few weeks after the funeral, while Miyazaki's sister was bathing, he tried to peep at her. Although she told him to leave, he refused and instead attacked her. His mother became aware of this incident and scolded him, but she too was attacked. After this, his parents urged him to stop wasting his time on trivial activities like photography and filming and to focus on the family business. However, he vehemently refused and continued his disruptive behaviors. Behind his scholarly facade, those who knew Miyazaki saw him as a somewhat aloof, mild-mannered man who rarely spoke to his colleagues. He was punctual at work and never had conflicts with anyone. Miyazaki led a secluded life and rarely participated in social events or made friends. He often hid his hands in photos due to embarrassment. However, he enjoyed drawing and reading manga at home. Only when his horrific crimes were exposed did everyone truly become horrified. In his free time, he began to stalk young girls, randomly selecting his victims to satisfy his perverse desires. During the investigation, he initially only confessed to murdering Ayako Nomoto. After a while, he also confessed to killing Mari Kono and Erika Namba. 2 days before his first crime, while standing by a window to enjoy the view outside, he noticed a group of children playing in a spacious area below without any adults around. From that moment, a depraved thought began to haunt Miyazaki. On the afternoon of August 22, the day of the crime, also a day after his 26th birthday, he drove to Iruma, Saitama, and entered an outdoor swimming pool. He circled the pool, watching the girls swim, searching for a suitable target. Around 2 p.m., as the weather grew hotter and the temperature reached 32 degrees Celsius, the children played at the pool, gradually leaving to gather their belongings to go home and avoid the sun. At that time, he noticed a 4-year-old girl, Mari Kono. She was wearing and walking home alone. Miyazaki stared at her and followed his target closely. As there were some pedestrians on the road, he could not find a suitable moment to approach until Mari reached her house. As she left her house again, walking towards a friend's place, Miyazaki quickly hid on the side, took a shortcut, and reached a pedestrian overpass nearby to wait for her. At 3 p.m., despite the sweltering heat, the overpass was deserted except for Miyazaki. Soon after, Mari also walked onto the overpass. Seizing the opportunity, Miyazaki approached her and struck up a conversation. Using a series of sweet-sounding words, he successfully lured her into following him. He drove her towards western Tokyo and parked the car under a bridge in a secluded wooded area near a power company in Hachioji, Tokyo. There, he sat next to the frightened little girl for about half an hour. As her fear escalated and she began to cry desperately, at 6:30 p.m., Miyazaki placed his deformed hands around Mary's neck and strangled her, feeling a rush of excitement as if he had overcome himself for the first time. He then stripped her and engaged in vile acts with her body. Afterward, he hid Mary's body in some bushes on a hill, took her clothes and sandals home as a grim trophy. The next day, on August 23, 1988, driven by a macabre impulse, Miyazaki returned to the hill with his camera to document the crime scene. Days later, he returned to dismember Mary's body and preserved the parts in his refrigerator. The police eventually discovered these body parts after Miyazaki's arrest. To dispose of the bones, he burned them in a furnace and ground them into powder. On December 12, 1988, 3 months after the first murder, around 5 p.m., while returning from a friend's house, he encountered his third victim, a 4-year-old girl named Erika Namba. Observing that Erika was playing alone, he lured her into his car. However, during the drive, Erika suddenly started crying. Miyazaki drove to a parking area in Nagori, Hano City, where he found a secluded spot without people around. He forced Erika to undress in the back seat and began taking pictures. Throughout the process, as the girl continued to cry inconsolably, Miyazaki felt annoyed and agitated. By 7 p.m., he had strangled Erika to death. After completing his horrific act, he bound her hands and feet behind her back, covered her with a bedsheet, and placed her body in the trunk of his car. He discarded her clothes in a nearby forest and left her body on a mountain next to the parking area. On December 15, 1988, Erika's clothes were found by a river near Yoko's. Following this clue, her body was also discovered on a mountain in the town of Namakori, Hano City. At that time, 2 witnesses had seen the murderer Miyazaki, but their memories were inaccurate. They were unfamiliar with car brands and had mistakenly remembered Miyazaki's Nissan as a Toyota. They also incorrectly estimated Miyazaki's height and age, causing the police to waste a lot of time and manpower in a fruitless search. If only they had correctly identified Miyazaki's car brand at that time, he might have been apprehended sooner. At Erika Namba's funeral, her father expressed gratitude to the police and the witnesses. For him, finding his daughter's body was more important than anything else. This case series then gained national attention. The media coverage was extensive, and the words of thanks from Erika's father became well known, including to the murderer Miyazaki. From then on, he conceived the idea of returning the victims' bodies to their families. In the first case, he placed some of them and sent them to her parents. He also sent a letter to Mary's parents under the alias Amada Yuko, starting with a thank you note for organizing the funeral but included some taunting words that infuriated Mary's family. Notably, Miyazaki had sent Mary's family a cryptic puzzle composed of 5 English words. After rearranging the letters, it translated to a sentence that read, "Miyazaki Tsutomu boxes beautifully." He had brazenly embedded his real name in the puzzle to taunt the police. A month after his arrest, Miyazaki confessed to killing his second victim, Masami. The murder of Masami occurred about a month and a half after the first incident. On October 3, 1988, while searching for a target on a rural road near an elementary school in Hano City, Miyazaki pretended to be a passerby asking Masami, who was walking home alone, for directions. He then lured her into his car and drove her to the same location where he had killed Mari. Around 5 p.m., Miyazaki strangled the unfortunate Masami to death, and after a brief convulsion from the body that startled him, he fled the scene, leaving behind her clothes. After returning the first victim's remains to her family, Miyazaki intended to do the same with Masami's body. However, he could not recall the exact location where he had discarded her, thus abandoning his plan. According to Miyazaki's confession, the police immediately went to the crime scene to search and indeed found Masami's remains. All 4 of Miyazaki's kidnapping and murder cases were eventually brought to light. Indifferent to his crimes after their commission, he even taunted the victims' families by calling them, further tormenting them. If the families picked up the phone, they heard only heavy breathing, which chilled them to the bone. If they did not answer, he would keep calling until they did, sometimes letting the phone ring for up to 20 minutes. After Miyazaki's arrest, the police conducted a search of his home in Akuruno, Tokyo, which revealed the typical decor of an otaku. He possessed a large collection of depraved and violent anime DVDs and horror films, which also played a role in the societal backlash against otakus at that time. The police found nearly 6,000 horror films, including videos made by Miyazaki himself documenting his attacks on the 4 girls. They also discovered parts of the 4th victim's decomposing body in his closet. Miyazaki filmed the videos to facilitate his own gratification and to satisfy his perverse desires. It was found that Miyazaki suffered from a congenital bone disorder characterized by shortened forearms, misaligned wrist joints, and underdeveloped thumbs. His physical deformities contributed to his extreme self-consciousness and low self-esteem, preventing normal interactions with the opposite sex. Miyazaki transferred his affection to female anime characters, typically those under 10 years of age. To accurately recreate the crime scenes, the police took Miyazaki to the locations where he had killed Masami. During his recounting of the events, Miyazaki spoke naturally, without showing any signs of fear or remorse. His brutal and inhumane method of committing the crimes was widely reported in the media, causing a national uproar in Japan. At the time, crimes against minors were rare in Japan, and the otaku community faced intense scrutiny, accusations, and stigmatization following these heinous acts. The media dubbed Miyazaki the otaku murderer, triggering a moral panic aimed at otakus. Many blamed anime and horror films for turning him into a ruthless killer. Newspapers suggested that being ostracized by his family and mistreated by society led Miyazaki to retreat into his own fantastical world to escape the injustices of his life. Psychologists examined him during the trial, and they initially determined that his lack of family connections was a key sign of his emerging rebelliousness. In 1989, when Miyazaki was captured, he shared that if he tried to discuss his issues with his parents, they would dismiss him. What he truly wanted was for someone to listen to the difficulties he had always faced in life. Indeed, his parents seemed more concerned with their careers and material wealth than with his feelings and desires. He felt utterly alone. Whenever he saw a little girl playing by herself, he saw himself in her. During the time he lived with his parents, he often thought about committing reckless acts. His parents, unable to bear the shame of their son's actions, publicly disowned him and refused to pay for his legal defense. Miyazaki's father later died in 1994, overwhelmed by shame and societal scorn. 6 months after his arrest, on March 30, 1990, the case went to trial at the Tokyo District Court. Miyazaki was charged with 4 counts of murder and other offenses. At the trial, Miyazaki stated, "After committing the murders, I cut off their hands and feet to keep as trophies, then drank the blood from their bodies and cooked their arms to eat." His callous words shocked everyone present in the courtroom. Some speculated that his criminal behavior was due to a neurological disorder, prompting the court to invite Professor Hideo Hisaki, a psychiatrist from Keio University, to assess Miyazaki's mental state. After 2 years of observation, on March 31, 1992, Professor Hisaki concluded that Miyazaki exhibited extreme and violent personality traits but was fully capable of being held accountable and did not suffer from multiple personality disorder. During a court session on November 11 of the same year, Miyazaki made further confessions. He expressed deep sorrow and despair over his grandfather's death. During the ash scattering at his grandfather's funeral, he secretly swallowed a part of his grandfather's remains, believing it was the only way to keep his grandfather with him forever. He also revealed, "After each murder, I arranged a dark room, placed a few candles around, and wore black clothes to perform a resurrection ceremony for my grandfather." His words once again stirred turmoil in the courtroom. His defense attorney requested a second psychiatric evaluation, and the trial was temporarily adjourned. In 1994, after nearly 2 years of further psychiatric assessment, Professor Yukio Uchinuma of the University of Tokyo, responsible for the second evaluation, delivered his findings. He diagnosed Miyazaki with a personality disorder focused on dissociation, noting a certain impairment in his ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Based on this psychiatric assessment, the prosecutor demanded the death penalty for Miyazaki on charges of premeditated murder, kidnapping, and desecration of the bodies. On April 14, 1997, after a trial that lasted 7 years, the Tokyo District Court sentenced Miyazaki to death for murder among other charges. Miyazaki was dissatisfied with the verdict and appealed to the Tokyo High Court and subsequently to the Supreme Court of Japan, but his appeals were unsuccessful. The Supreme Court eventually dismissed his appeal with a statement that read, "The motives were purely to satisfy his desires. The actions brutally and cruelly victimized innocent young girls, leaving no room for leniency." The heinous nature of the crimes committed and their sheer brutality meant that on the day of sentencing, Miyazaki performed antics to avoid appearing in court. When he heard the verdict in prison, he remained indifferent and emotionless. He remarked, "Surely there must have been some mistake. I believe I will be exonerated soon." Throughout the trial, he never showed any remorse nor did he ever apologize to any of the victims' families. On June 17, 2008, at the age of 45, Miyazaki was executed by hanging. Thus, a series of horrifying events that spanned 21 years across Tokyo and Saitama finally came to an end. The notorious Otaku murderer, who preyed viciously on young girls, ultimately paid the price for his appalling crimes. Although Miyazaki faced justice, the atrocities he committed left enduring pain for the families of the 4 unfortunate girls. Was justice served too late?